Warning: viewing these images may not be suitable for some audiences. This is North Carolina. It is a warm Monday evening. As the residents of the area settle in for the night, an incident is about to unfold. Tomorrow, a murder will occur. Both the killer and the victim are present at this location. Early Saturday morning, 23-year-old Stephanie Bennett sets off on a trip. She is a manager at a tech company, working every day except weekends. On weekends, Stephanie makes the 4-hour journey from Raleigh to Greenville to see Richard Torres. Richard, 24, is a graduate student in engineering. The couple met while attending Roanoke College and have been in a relationship for 4 years.
Stephanie was incredibly lovely. She was deeply in love with Richard and full of excitement to travel to Greenville to be with him. They spent their weekends house hunting, looking for a place to live together.
On Sunday, their search for a house in Greenville yielded results. Stephanie, who had returned to Raleigh on Monday evening, is now at home after finishing her work. But there is still no sign of her roommates, Emily and Laura Jessie, arriving.
The three of us were roommates and had a very good and close relationship. And it rarely happened that we would be alone in the apartment.
These three girls, whose friendship dates back to college, have moved to Raleigh together to start their careers. However, tonight their group is not complete because Emily is in Roanoke with her boyfriend and is staying the night there. And Laura Jessie has also gone to her family to attend a funeral.
There was someone around our apartment who was peeping into the windows and gave us a sense of insecurity. For this reason, we were very careful.
Very fear, that night before going to bed, Stephanie obsessively drew all the curtains and checked the front door lock to set her mind at ease. And with this peace of mind, she slept. But on the morning of Tuesday, May 21st, things did not go as usual. Stephanie neither showed up at work nor answered the repeated calls to her phone. This very long silence and not hearing from her worried her boyfriend so deeply that he was forced to reach out to Stephanie's roommates and contacted them.
When the building manager arrives at the scene, she notices that Stephanie's vehicle is still parked. This detail, which didn't match her routine, concerns the manager, and she decides to enter the apartment to check on Stephanie's well-being.
We were on shift when a call came into the center. I answered the phone. The caller was the complex manager, who, with a trembling voice, reported the discovery of Miss Bennett's lifeless body.
When our team and the detectives arrived at the scene and entered the room, we were met with a shocking sight. The victim had no clothing on whatsoever. Initial observations indicated that she had been restrained, as marks of pressure and binding were clearly visible on her wrists and ankles. There was also deep, dark bruising around her neck, indicating severe pressure. Furthermore, the killer had used a blue piece of clothing belonging to the victim to gag her. From that very first moment, we knew this wasn't an ordinary murder case, and that we were dealing with a violent and calculated crime.
It was terrifying. Even now, when I think about it, my body shakes. I was in total shock, as if my brain couldn't believe what it was hearing. I kept repeating to myself, "Stephanie, no. God, anyone but Stephanie." I hope such a tragedy never happens to anyone. But the painful part is that Stephanie really was an exceptional and different person. She wasn't just a friend. She was a kind, vibrant, and a genuine, beautiful Southern girl who always made us laugh and brought us joy. Stephanie had come from that small town in Virginia with a world of hope to stand on her own 2 feet and build her life. She was full of passion for life. We all were. And now, her absence leaves an unfillable void for her family and all of us who loved her.
Stephanie, who was born in Rocky Mount, Virginia, entered Roanoke College after high school to pursue her dream in business. She had a clear roadmap for her life, becoming a successful marketer and building a warm, shared life with her love, Richard. At the crime scene, Detective Chris Morgan and his team search every inch of the apartment for clues. The signs of trauma on the victim's body and the discovered biological evidence completely revealed the attacker's sinister intent and primary motive. But a crucial piece of the puzzle was still missing: the weapon used to commit the crime. During the examination of the perimeter, right beneath the window, traces of the killer's frantic escape were visible, pieces of the victim's clothing and a red bag abandoned on the bushes. Meanwhile, Richard, having heard the news, rushed over from Greenville.
We searched that apartment inch by inch. The mandate was clear. No clue was to be overlooked. The forensics team examined all surfaces to find fingerprints. The work didn't end there. We sent the tiniest fibers and particles from every single point where Stephanie's lifeless body had contact for DNA testing.
The signs of bruising on the victim's body and the biological evidence obtained from her completely revealed the attacker's sinister intent and primary motive. Examination of the scene revealed that the room window had remained open about 2.5 centimeters. This was an important clue for the detectives. They suspected that the killer had gained entry into the apartment through this route. Examination of the exterior perimeter reinforced the theory of the killer's hasty escape. Important evidence was scattered on the vegetation beneath the window, including a red bag and personal clothing belonging to the victim, indicating that the killer had not had the opportunity to collect them and had fled the scene in haste.
Finding that personal clothing, after seeing the victim's condition, who had been gagged using that same type of clothing, made us think that these two matters were related.
While yellow tape was stretched around the apartment, Richard Torres, the victim's fiancé, rushed to the scene from South Carolina in a panic. In the interrogations, he explained that his last contact with Stephanie had been at 8 o'clock the previous night, and everything seemed calm. Given the evidence, credible witnesses, and his distance from the location at the time of the murder, Richard's name was quickly crossed off the list of suspects. But proving his innocence did not cure his pain. He was left with the empty space of a love that had been extinguished forever. After the team finished their work and the crime scene agents left, permission was granted for Stephanie's roommates, Emily and Laura, to enter the house for a few minutes to collect their essential items. But as soon as she entered, Emily noticed changes. Emily's mobile phone, which she was always in the habit of placing next to her bed, and her white clock, was now found inside the closet, and there was no trace of the small white clock. Other items had also been moved or had completely disappeared. According to Emily, the things that were stolen had no material value and were completely ordinary. Another strange detail was the disappearance of the laundry basket. Criminal psychologists believe that in such cases, the killer takes objects with him as trophies or souvenirs, so that by looking at them, he can reconstruct the memory of that ominous night in his mind. When the case detective asked Emily if she had noticed any suspicious behavior around the building in recent days, she pointed out an important detail. One of the neighbors had warned us that she had seen an unknown person who was secretly looking into the houses through the windows. Ken Copeland, a Raleigh police homicide detective, states, "We followed up on this clue and reached Mrs. Alfred, the next-door neighbor. She said that the night before the incident, she saw a man standing in the dark, carefully peeping into Stephanie's room window. Mrs. Alfred screamed upon seeing this scene, and the man immediately fled. Our witness couldn't see his face, but she remembered that the individual had a large build and was wearing a black baseball cap." With this revelation, similar reports from other residents of the complexes around Lake Lynn reached the police. Apparently, the rumor of a peeping Tom had existed for weeks, and he had been watching his victim for a long time.
While not all hidden observers commit murder, police files show that most dangerous attackers have had a history of lurking and watching victims in their past. An individual who hides in the shadows and violates the privacy of others without permission has the potential to commit even more dangerous acts.
The investigation team, by piecing together the neighbor's observations, managed to obtain an initial sketch of the suspect. A white male with a thin build, a long face, and short brown hair. Simultaneously with the release of this image, the DNA result discovered from the victim's body was sent to the criminal database to find the killer's identity. But the result was disappointing, and no match was found. On the other hand, the search for fingerprints in the apartment also reached a dead end, as no fingerprint from the killer was found. In these critical conditions, without delay, the detectives turned to the best clue they have from the crime scene so far.
We had to figure out where those clothes and that red bag came from. So we took photos of the items and went around the complex asking the residents if they could help us identify the owner.
After extensive inquiries, a girl named Ellie, upon seeing the bag, immediately identified it and stated that the bag belonged to her friend, James. According to Ellie, last week, in a strange act, James had shown her the contents of the bag and confessed that he had stolen those undergarments from the building's public laundry room. Detectives discover that 17-year-old James has obsessive tendencies to steal women's personal clothing. He lived right in the unit next door, and his bedroom was separated from Stephanie's bedroom by only a thin wall.
He was the closest person to the murder scene that night. That was enough to cast suspicion on him.
Did you know Stephanie Bennett?
Yeah, she was a really nice girl. She lived right next to my house.
We found a lot of women's personal clothing right outside her window. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't know.
We found them exactly underneath your apartment. Do you recognize them?
No, I really don't know.
James, tell me the truth. Did you have any part in Miss Bennett's death?
No, I didn't.
Although James had no recorded criminal history, the theft of those women's clothes allowed the detectives to obtain a warrant and proceed to get his DNA the next day. Since the DNA obtained from Stephanie did not match her boyfriend's DNA, the investigators are certain that this is the killer's DNA. The laboratory compares the sample obtained from James with this DNA.
When they received the DNA sample results, there was no match.
Finally, James confessed and admitted that the bag containing stolen personal items belonged to him, but he is not Stephanie's killer. With James ruled out, the investigation team widened the search and asked all male residents of the complex for a voluntary DNA sample. Most neighbors cooperated to help find the killer. But 2 floors above the victim's unit, detectives encountered suspicious behavior. In that unit, 3 young friends lived together. When the police asked them for a DNA sample, they refused to cooperate.
We dug deep into these 3 guys' backgrounds. Their files showed a history of drug-related offenses, but honestly, other than the fact they wouldn't cooperate, there was no solid evidence linking them to the murder scene. Still, we couldn't take that risk, so we sent one of our most seasoned detectives after them, someone whose specialty is convincing people to cooperate. His tactics worked, and he managed to get them to agree to take the test. But when the lab results came back, we hit a dead end again. None of their DNA matched the killer sample.
Hundreds of hours of grueling work in analyzing hundreds of DNA samples. A bitter truth lay before the police. All these efforts were in vain. From the moment Stephanie's lifeless body was found until now, detectives had not gotten even one step closer to identifying the killer. And the case was stalling at square one.
Nearly a year passed, and there was no news. The only thing that was constantly on my mind, my entire worry, was that this story might repeat itself for someone else.
The summer of 2004 arrived. 2 full years had passed since Stephanie's murder. At this juncture, Detective Chris Morgan retired. With his departure, the responsibility of re-examining the entire case and the clues was entrusted entirely to Ken Copeland and Taylor.
Our first step was returning to square one. We had to sit down and discard all previous mindsets to view the case from the beginning with fresh eyes. It was not a simple task. In front of us were thousands of pages of reports, interviews, and other things that we had to carefully review again.
Pieced together the witness statements, there was a consistent pattern in their stories. Reports of a prowler loitering around the complex and looking into homes. The victim herself had noticed this heavy presence. Stephanie was truly shaken by this and had voiced her concerns to those around her. In our line of work, when we are faced with such a scenario, logic dictates that these are not coincidences. Our police deduction was that the hidden watcher and the killer were most likely the same person.
The detective's next step was re-interviewing the witnesses. They asked the individuals to focus more carefully on the identity of that unknown watcher whom they had seen years ago and try to recall every detail. This time the tide turned. During these fresh interviews, new points regarding the case suspect were revealed. Details that had not been mentioned in the reports from 2 years prior and changed the course of the investigation.
I want you to go back to that time. Think a little. What do you remember about that man who was peeping into windows? Any detail, even if it doesn't seem important to you.
Well, as far as I remember, he was always smoking.
Is there anything else? Think carefully. These details are very important.
Oh, now that I think about it, he had a dog. Yeah, a big dog was always with him.
A dog? Are you sure? This is the first time you're mentioning a dog.
Yeah, the image just came to my mind. He always had a leash in his hand. I think that man and his dog lived in the same apartment complex.
As a result, our attention was drawn to those who had dogs in that complex in 2002.
The investigation team immediately contacted the apartment management office to review the 2002 records. The goal was to find someone who had registered ownership of a dog. Examining the list yielded results very quickly, and the identity of the person in question was identified. 34-year-old Drew Planton.
The investigation team retrieved his driver's license photo to compare it with the initial composite sketch, but the result was discouraging. Not much of a match was seen between the two images. Furthermore, a background check on Drew Planton showed that his record was completely clean, and he had never set foot in a police station.
The detectives went to see Drew Planton, who had recently moved to another location in Raleigh.
No matter how often we went to his front door, we couldn't find him. So we decided to go to his work to talk to him there. He worked at the Department of Agriculture, and actually, he tested the contents of dog food.
Hello, Mr. Planton. I am Detective Ken Copeland, and this is my partner, Taylor. We had a few simple questions for you.
What's this about? Is there a problem?
We had questions regarding the Stephanie Bennett case.
I don't know anything about it. Haven't even heard of it.
Have you ever been to the Sunnyside Apartments?
No, I don't think I have been. Why?
You don't even walk your dog?
How do you know I have a dog?
If you don't mind, could you come with us to the station to continue our discussion?
No, I can't. I'm busy.
Stephanie's case wasn't an ordinary event. It was the top headline of all Raleigh news agencies and was talked about everywhere. Now imagine, Drew Planton lived exactly in the same complex where the murder had taken place. The fact that he pretended as if he didn't know a thing about the matter didn't make sense. This very feigned ignorance was like a red flag for us. His behavior tells us he is hiding something.
After that conversation, the detectives decided to scrutinize Drew's employment records. His boss described Drew Planton as a quiet, harmless, and model employee, but among the timesheets, an anomaly stood out. Drew, who was known for his punctuality, had been late only once in his entire work history, May 21st. Exactly the same day that Stephanie's lifeless body was discovered, he had not gone to work in the morning and had arrived at the office in the evening with a significant delay. This was not a coincidence. Detectives Taylor and Copeland were now certain that they had to place all their focus on this man.
Look, Drew, we know you're a respectable guy. Your boss spoke very highly of you. But our protocol is that we have to check all the men who were living in that area. It's just a routine procedure, that's all.
I've already told you everything I knew. There's nothing left to say.
I hear you, but this red tape has my hands tied. With a simple DNA test, your name gets cleared from the suspect list forever. You know you're innocent, so there's nothing to worry about, right?
It's not about being worried. I don't like my genetic information floating around in the police system. It's an invasion of privacy.
Look, listen. This doesn't hurt at all. There are no needles involved, no blood draw. It's very easy. I just run a cotton swab along the inside of your cheek. It won't even take 5 seconds. Once it's done, you go home and you'll never see us again.
Do you think I'm stupid? I read the news. I know what happens when someone gives a DNA test. That sample stays there forever, and you use it against a person whenever you want.
Look, if you don't cooperate, we're forced to think you're hiding something. Why should an innocent man be afraid of a simple swab? This resistance is making you look more suspicious. Let's just get this over with right now.
Think whatever you want. I'm not taking the test. If you have evidence, show it. If not, I'm going to work.
In the second encounter, the police's attempt to obtain a voluntary sample from Drew Planton hit a dead end. Despite the police's deep suspicion, they did not have sufficient evidence to legally compel him. Drew's stubborn resistance sent a clear message. The direct approach is futile. Therefore, the detectives decided to change strategy.
When the direct approach hit a dead end, we entered phase 2, covert surveillance. We were shadowing Drew, waiting for the slightest slip-up. The law gives us a free hand in this regard. As soon as an individual discards trash in a public place, they no longer have ownership over it. We were looking for anything that would have his DNA, a half-consumed water bottle, a cigarette filter, or even a coffee cup. He just had to throw one of these away for us to be able to legally collect it as evidence and match it with the killer's DNA.
The surveillance team saw Drew standing outside with his friends and smoking. They were waiting for Drew to throw his cigarette butt on the ground and immediately seize it as evidence. But he put out his cigarette and put it back in his pocket, as if he had figured out our plan.
Drew never threw anything away and wouldn't even put out his trash so as not to leave a trace behind. Copeland later admitted, "In all my years of service, I had never seen anyone toy with the police like this for a DNA sample." But finally, the heat and fatigue took their toll. On a hot afternoon in the city of Raleigh, Drew made a huge mistake. He threw an empty water bottle into a trash can. Agents, who were lying in wait, snatched the bottle. Now the investigation has come to a halt. Detectives are waiting for a phone call from the lab, waiting for news that says Drew Planton's DNA results have a 100% match with the killer's sperm.
This is Taylor. Is the test result ready?
Yes. We carefully compared the saliva sample on the bottle with the killer's DNA.
What was the result?
I'm sorry, Detective. The analysis shows that the suspect's sample has no match with the killer's DNA.
We officially hit a dead end. This result felt like a loss to us. We had no logical explanation for it. How was it possible that the samples didn't match?
Drew Planton is removed from the list of suspects. The detectives likely returned to square one, unless they had also checked the backgrounds of some of his family members while investigating Planton. William Smith lives in another area, But according to the neighbors, he often visited his cousin and sometimes walked Drew's dog around the house. Furthermore, William has a concerning criminal record, so it is likely that the peeping Tom is actually Drew's cousin, William Smith.
His previous charges involved planting hidden cameras in women's private spaces. This record clearly shows that he has a sick habit, and our police experience tells us that someone who violates privacy with a camera today might resort to physical violence tomorrow to satisfy his urges.
The detectives go to William to get a DNA sample, but when he refuses to give a sample voluntarily, these two detectives decide to do it secretly.
We tracked him down and found out he was working at a restaurant. Taylor and I decided to go in, but not with police badges. We wore plain clothes and went into the restaurant, sitting right where he was waiting tables. Our role was simple: two carefree tourists who had come to see the city and were looking for a good time.
William was very warm. He came to the table, chatted with us, and took our order. When we asked him about the hot spots in the city, he recommended a nightclub and said it's a good hangout after 10 p.m. We hit it off with him so well that he suggested coming there with us after his shift ended.
When we got to the club, phase 2 of the plan began. While Taylor was dancing with William and keeping him occupied, I had another duty. Every time William drank his drink and put the glass on the table, I would quickly and discreetly swipe that glass as evidence.
At the end of the night, when we walked out of there, we had a sense of victory. We had managed to collect several glasses without him suspecting a thing. We were sure that we had finally obtained those excellent samples we were looking for.
We sent the saliva samples from the glasses to the lab with urgency. Our team was ready to execute the arrest warrant as soon as it was confirmed. But the call from the lab ruined all plans. The experts announced that William Smith's genetic profile does not match the killer's biological traces. He too was crossed off the list of suspects.
This news was very disappointing, but an unexpected ray of hope was found within it. William's DNA indicated he and the killer are blood-related. This clue directed Detective Copeland's mind straight to the only relative who resided near Stephanie Bennett, Drew Planton, the very suspect who had previously been cleared from suspicion based on the DNA extracted from the water bottle. Copeland had developed a different perspective regarding the validity of that bottle. A new suspicion was in his mind that the water bottle was likely just an intentional decoy to mislead the police. Taylor and Copeland had realized they were dealing with an intelligent predator. Therefore, to trap Drew, they had no choice but to revisit Jennifer, the laboratory manager. Jennifer was the very person who, during their initial encounter, had firmly rejected the accusation when she heard her quiet and respectable employee was a murder suspect. It was unbelievable to her that a man with a noble and unassuming appearance could be a murderous monster.
Jennifer, at first, thought we were making a mistake, and that quiet and unassuming employee could never be the same monster we were looking for.
She started watching Drew closely and very soon noticed obsessive behaviors she hadn't seen before.
Jennifer's reports were strange. She said Drew emptied his trash can every hour so that nothing would remain in it. That week, the heat was killing, but Drew would take his lunch and go eat in the car.
This secrecy wasn't limited only to food. Drew had long hair, but Jennifer noticed that with frightening precision, he would immediately collect the hairs from the floor or his desk, as if he knew that his body was a walking piece of evidence.
This level of caution finally scared Jennifer. A few days later, my phone rang. It was Jennifer. She said, "I have an idea." The plan was this. Jennifer got Drew and his colleagues out under the pretext of a work dinner. We also sent 2 of our undercover agents to sit at the table next to them. At the restaurant, which had a buffet set up, Planton only chose foods that could be eaten by hand. He left no trace behind. Even when going to the restroom, he took his napkin with him and put his soda straw in his pocket, meaning he didn't leave behind anything that might have even a speck of his body's DNA on it.
We were losing hope and thought this was just another failure until it was time for dessert. That was when we saw him freeze at the table. He was thinking about how he could eat pudding without a spoon or fork. Finally, he was forced to eat a little bit, but he immediately picked up the fork and scrubbed it so hard with his napkin that it was as if he wanted to rub the steel off the fork. As soon as he stepped out of the restaurant, our guys grabbed the fork and sent it to the lab. The lab results came back. The fork was contaminated. The DNA of several other people, both men and women, was found on it. Apparently, the restaurant hadn't washed the forks well. We were confused and frustrated. We were sure this was the killer, but we had to prove it. We had to find another way.
The detectives were caught in a legal deadlock. Without a search warrant in hand, entering Drew Planton's home was impossible. Up to this moment, the investigation team's only assets were a collection of suspicious behaviors and a DNA clue from the suspect's cousin, which only tightened the circle of suspicion but was not definitive proof. Meanwhile, Jennifer, Drew's employer, allowed the suspect's workplace to be examined to find the slightest trace of DNA. But Jennifer stated with certainty, attempting to find DNA on Drew's desk and belongings is futile. With a pathological obsession, he immediately disinfects any surface he touches. But there was a weak point. According to work protocol, Drew was sometimes required to use rubber gloves for certain tests. These gloves could turn into a golden trap, a closed, warm environment that trapped skin cells from the hand and was the best source for extracting DNA.
Jennifer devised a brilliant plan. That day, she assigned a test to Drew so that he would be forced to use those gloves. This was our best chance.
The plan was precise. As soon as Drew finished his work and took off the gloves, Jennifer had to retrieve them and hand them over to the police. The operations team was lying in wait outside the building, and seconds were ticking by slowly. There was no news of a call from Jennifer.
That's why we called Jennifer. We asked, what happened? Did Drew leave? She said she wasn't sure and needed to check.
Jennifer went down the stairs with fear and trembling and entered the semi-dark office space. She thought Drew had gone, but suddenly she saw a shadow. Drew was still there, sitting behind his desk. Jennifer's heart stopped. If Drew realized she was cooperating with the police, her life was in danger. In a split second, Jennifer decided to act. She said with a trembling voice that she had just come to get the work report. Drew replied coolly that the work was finished and the report was ready. Jennifer took the paper and returned upstairs in terror to release her held breath. Finally, Drew Planton left the building. The path was safe. The police immediately moved in and seized the gloves. Thousands of hours of interrogation, surveillance, and undercover operations had been conducted to trap Stephanie's killer. But what kept the detectives awake was a terrifying nightmare, that this intelligent predator might commit another crime before being captured. The fate of the case was now tied to a pair of rubber gloves.
We sent the sample to the lab. It took 3 or 4 agonizing days for the results to come back. When the phone rang, we were just waiting for one word.
The DNA obtained from the gloves was a 100% match with the DNA from the murder scene.
For a criminal detective, reaching such a point is like conquering a peak. If you get lucky and experience it even once, you can say that moment is the pinnacle of job satisfaction.
Ultimately, with the DNA match, the police obtained the legal warrant to search Drew's apartment.
When we entered the apartment, the first thing that caught our attention was a green and white laundry basket sitting in the corner of the room. We checked, and it was confirmed that this basket belonged 100% to Stephanie Bennett.
During a closer inspection, we found a plastic container. Drew had kept Stephanie's personal and private clothing inside it. But it wasn't just that. Inside that same container, we found a pair of women's pantyhose, a gun, a knife, and a complete lock-picking set, along with its instruction manual. It seemed like they were his work tools.
Among the documents, we came across a tax refund check that didn't have Drew's name on it. The check was issued to a person named Rebecca Huseman. The address on the check was from Michigan. We contacted the East Lansing Police Department to see what the story was. The detective there told us that Rebecca Huseman has a murder case that remains unsolved. That was when we realized that most likely Stephanie wasn't Drew Planten's only victim.
6 years ago, 22-year-old college student Rebecca Huseman was killed by a gunshot on her way home. The case indicated that the attacker had intended to assault her, but had failed. The bullet that ended Rebecca's life matches one of the weapons in Drew Planten's collection. With the evidence complete, the police, with the cooperation of Jennifer Kumari, surprised and arrested Drew at his workplace. The police have everything needed to prove Drew Planten's brutal rape of Stephanie Bennett in hand. In the first step, Drew surveilled Stephanie while walking his dog. Then he patiently waited for a night when her roommates were not around and Stephanie was home alone. He put the phone in the closet so Stephanie could not call for help.
Examination of the scene shows that after the attack, Drew dragged Stephanie by force into Emily's room. The choice of this location was not accidental at all. It had the best strategic position. Why? Because that room's window was the escape route. He knew that if the door suddenly opened and the roommates arrived, he could disappear by taking just 2 steps.
Unfortunately, when Drew Planten took Stephanie's life with complete ruthlessness, he went out the window and returned to his apartment a few buildings away. Witnesses had noticed Drew watching Stephanie Bennett on the last night, but no one could provide an exact description of his face to the police, and he was even mistaken for his cousin William, and the composite sketch drawn looked like William.
The day we went to put the cuffs on him, he didn't say a single word. Absolutely nothing. That day, he wouldn't even look me in the eye. This silence wasn't just for the moment of the arrest. Afterwards, he never spoke again. It got to the point where it was as if his body system had shut down. He could no longer walk or speak. He acted as if he didn't exist at all and had faded from this world.
The moment I answered the phone and heard that they had finally arrested him, my legs went weak. I had to get out of the room so I could breathe. I sat on the floor in the hallway and just cried. In that moment, amidst those sobs, I felt the greatest relief of my life, that the person responsible for my best friend's death could no longer hurt anyone.
He had suffered a complete mental breakdown, to the point that his body wouldn't cooperate, and we had to bring him in a wheelchair. When he entered the courtroom, he had severed his connection with reality. He kept his eyes closed and refused to look at anything or anyone.
Right before standing trial for Stephanie's murder, Drew decides to keep his secret to himself forever.
On January 2nd, 2006, Drew Planten decided to close his case his own way. He ended his life in Central Prison and escaped. Our analysis is clear. He was a full-blown serial killer. It's true that we were only able to prove the identity of 2 of his victims, but we don't have a shred of doubt that he had cast the shadow of death over other lives as well. Nameless victims whom unfortunately we couldn't find, and their secrets were buried with Drew.
Stephanie Bennett's loved ones are now the heirs to her smiles. By recalling all the good memories this young woman had created for them, they are trying to find the necessary strength to accept this grief and put this tragedy behind them.
She had a great impact on my life. When I think about her, I feel better. I miss so many things about her, but what I miss the most is our friendship.
I feel like she never left me alone. It's as if her spirit is right here, right now, beside me. I have always told her in private, and I say it again, I am proud of you. My love for you is eternal, and my heart always aches because of the bitter and unfair fate you had.